Okay, so this is why I don't do live feeds, especially when flashbulb type events occur, because the news cycle is so frenetic that the story changes every moment. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happened tonight, and I'll share my analysis and my gut feeling of the situation. My gut feeling is that there was some mass media psyop that took place tonight. If you don't know what happened and you slept through this all, I'll just go over it from the beginning. So reports started coming out that there was an attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities in Isfahan in Iran, one of the nuclear facilities, which also has military bases nearby, airports, places of strategic interest, we'll say. Reports immediately started coming out that these bases were being attacked by Israel. This was after news that was reporting that there were attacks in Syria as well as Iraq. Now, immediately, it seemed official that, in fact, and video footage was coming out showing that a facility inside, presumably Isfahan, in this region, we didn't know if it was an airport at that time, if it was a military base, nuclear facility. Everybody suspected it was a nuclear facility. The IRGC was making threats that they were going to retaliate and take out the Israeli Dimona nuclear facility. And of course, this would put DEFCON, way, way, way the hell up there in terms of combat readiness. And it later turned out that, let's just go back, because 3 U.S. officials, unnamed officials, according to ABC News, and then quickly thereafter, other mainstream media outlets started reporting that indeed Israel had struck an air base inside Iran using cruise missiles or missiles. And then the story started to change and people started to say, no, there's drones, and the Iranians denied that anything was going on, even though there was indeed attempts to attack these facilities with drones. Now, they deny that any missiles were fired, but initially you had officials coming out making claims that there were fighter jets that had fired missiles against these facilities, okay? That, of course, would be, I was making plans, I was making phone calls, put it that way, because Iran has made it abundantly clear that if Israel strikes these facilities or anywhere inside Iran, or even its proxies now for that matter, that it is going to attack Israel directly. Now, because of this media fiasco, and you had almost in unison, completely synchronized, all of the U.S. mainstream media on the main page saying that Israel has struck Iran with missiles, okay? And Iran is denying this. They're saying, no, you didn't. If you did, we shot everything down. It was all drones. So the question is, why did all of this occur? Israel, most of Israel's media outlets are remaining somewhat impartial to the news. They're reporting on it from a third-party point of view. They're not saying that Israel confirms, like that the Israeli Air Force or the IDF took responsibility for these attacks. They're not admitting to that. They're just saying reports claim that Israel has targeted Iran via proxies in Iraq or by Israelis who are in Iraq. So they're not really fully taking responsibility for this. Now, immediately, people on the internet came to the conclusion that, well, this must be for the purpose of de-escalation. This must be for the purpose of providing an off-ramp, because you have the U.S. media who is providing basically the framework so that most of the people who are only going to pay 5 minutes of attention to this news story are going to see the headlines, Israel attacks Iran. Now they can walk away, save face. It's even Steven. They can have retaliated for the massive missile and drone salvo that was fired at them the other day, where 300 missiles were fired. and they can, kind of hold their heads up high and everybody can forget about it. We can temporarily de-escalate this situation. Some people are saying, well, this is a signal that Israel is no longer the regional superpower because it shows weakness and they're backing down. Only people who have eyes to see, 5% of the population, basically us, the ones who are really doing a deeper dive into this stuff. Because remember, the majority of people, they're going to passingly catch a headline on the news. They're not going to probe much deeper than that. They're going to read, Israel may have attacked Iran. End of story. Now, if Israel were to really fully attack Iran, they're going to look like assholes. Because now, of course, they're doubling down. And people will say, well, didn't you just attack Iran? Why are you always attacking Iran? So this is the average person who doesn't know any better is going to start thinking this. Now, immediately when this event happened, oil started spiking like crazy, 4% or something like that, almost 4%. Gold started to follow it as well. And as far as I know, oil has now retraced. And gold has now retraced also. Many people are mistakenly, however, presuming that this is it. Israel's just going to walk away. Way too quickly, way too quickly to jump to that conclusion. I think what has happened here is that the U.S., in an attempt to try to stabilize oil prices and de-escalate the situation temporarily, has provided Israel a optional off-ramp. Should they take it, who knows? And that off-ramp is, now our media has effectively allowed you to save face, walk away a winner from this, basically say that you were able to target Iranian defenses. And of course, because we completely shaped the narrative, and it should be known that the Iranian media is completely denying this. They're denying that airbase was hit. Some of them are saying that an airbase might have been hit, but intercepted over, and there was an explosion. And there, of course, there is video footage of explosions, but it's kind of grainy and blurry, so you can't really see what's actually happening. Was it a drone or an explosion that, fell down from the sky? It wasn't ground-based. Anyways, the U.S. media and the Iranian media are at odds. Now, some people are saying the Iranians are just intentionally downplaying this because they don't want a massive war either. Great, none of us want a massive war. I want more time to prepare for World War III. But I'm getting the seeking suspicion that the quickness with which everybody just presumes that all of these plans that have been in place for years, we're talking about numerous exercises that have simulated attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities. Just today, you had the Iranians say that they're now considering going nuclear. You had them say today that they were going to retaliate and strike the Dimona nuclear power plant inside Israel, and that wasn't even the Iranian military, that was the IRGC, okay, there's plausible deniability there. I mean, not that we'd ever buy it, we'd always, trace it back to them, but it's not necessarily Iran, it's Iranian proxies, potentially. So I think that we're jumping the gun to say that this is a complete nothing burger. And knowing the diabolical nature of those at the helm of the military-industrial complex, I would not be surprised, and my gut is telling me that the real response hasn't even come yet. Because remember, just an hour before this whole thing started to unfold, they were talking about how the real attack is not, or the attack, the retaliatory strike, the retaliatory to the retaliatory strike is not going to happen until after Passover, which I believe is sometime in May. That's when the big Israeli response is going to happen. And this is completely out of character for Israel to just walk away, even though there were few casualties suffered. And from a strategic point of view, the Israelis really won that round in a lot of ways, because they were able to take out Iranian generals with pretty much impunity. They had to shoot down a few missiles, 300 in fact, but now reports are coming out that they didn't fare as well as they say they did. Some reports indicate that they only shot down 84%. Now, interestingly, the Iranians are showing live feeds all over their country to prove that the places that the Israelis said were targeted weren't targeted. Now, for me, I'm thinking about security, and they're showing live feeds of their military bases, which is strange on its face. I mean, they know that the Israelis can see it from space because they get all their ISR from the United States. But you didn't see that in Israel. You didn't see any live feeds. You know, you don't have that level of disclosure. So we don't know, right? And that's the same thing that we ran into in the Ukrainian situation. The fog of war is incredibly thick. But I would encourage people to exercise extreme amounts of caution when people tell you that it's just back to business as usual now, and we've now obtained a modicum of regional stability as a result of this. I hope that is the case. I hope that the Israelis are backing down so things can stabilize for a while in the short term. But we know they did not draft up those bills in Congress that basically permit them and provide them the license they're going to need to go to war with Iran at the time of their choosing. We know that they didn't do all these chariots of fire exercises where they simulate strikes. And if anything, they're just trying to buy more time. They're trying to kick the can down the road, and they're engaging in some type of psychological warfare with the Iranians, I do believe. Because rumor had it that many of the high-ranking Iranian officials have been in a heightened state of their own DEFCON, if you will. And they've been, hiding out in the bunkers and getting ready for an Israeli response. So what does this do now? If they presume then that it's over, now they're going to drop their guard. I don't think they will. I think they're smart enough to see through this. And if anything, I would be incredibly more vigilant at this point in time, because they know this war has to happen at some point, because you simply can't have a bipolar power structure in that region. It's just, I mean, some people might say you could have that balance of power in the same way you did, but then you would have a permanent Cold War. And of course, Iran is now considering getting nuclear weapons, something that the Israelis have said is a red line. So I think we need to wait and see how this plays out. This is not over. My gut is telling me that this was all just a little mini psyop, and that there is going to be a big retaliation coming. And perhaps this was a probing operation. Perhaps this was just to toy with the Iranians. Recall that last night there was the Skymaster fiasco, where lots of electronic action messages were being sent out. Some people thought it was real world. Some people thought it was exercise. I just reported it to you guys that it was happening, and there was different interpretations of the event. I never said it was doomsday or anything like that, but one of these days that is going to be real world. And I'm leaning towards it was either real world or it was a convenient smoke screen, because when you have that level of activity, it does potentially provide a little bit of confusion and cover and distraction for what might be going on. So the Israelis are currently having a war cabinet meeting discussing who knows what. But as I said, it's completely out of character for them to respond in such a measured way. And if I'm seeing that, I'm quite certain that all of their adversaries within the region are seeing that. Now, if it is true that Israel has grown weak and that this is a sign of strategic defeat, then you're going to see a lot of people leaving that country soon, because a lot of those proxy groups are going to smell blood. And when they smell blood, it's going to get ugly. Okay, that's when they're going to ramp up their attacks. Plans have been approved for a Rafah invasion. Are they trying to figure that out first before they kick it into high gear with the Iranians? They would not have done what they did in Syria to the Iranian consulate if they weren't trying to pick a fight. It just would make no sense for them to have done that at that point in time. I think they could have taken out other targets and have exacted a more horizontal level of destruction, which would not have elicited the response that the Iranians did that put them in that situation unless they wanted to. They're not that stupid. In fact, they're incredibly smart people when they want to be. It's just, unfortunately, their leadership tends to be diabolical as well, and sometimes that overrides the long plan. So the drones, we know now, well, I shouldn't say we don't really know anything because the fog of war is thick, but the drones are alleged to have now originated inside Iran, okay, inside Iran, which could mean a lot of things. Iran's a massive country. So now you're having a situation where the same playbook that was used against Russia is being used inside Iran. So the question is this going to become a regular occurrence? And was this just a trial run? It's possible. It's very, very possible. Meanwhile, in Russia, and I'm just going to conclude on this note because it's late and it's been a hell of a long night. In Russia, a Tu-22 strategic bomber was videotaped falling out of the sky. Now, they're saying that this reportedly crashed due to a technical malfunction, but I mean, yeah, okay, you got a lot of military in the air, you're going to have a lot more military accidents. Just the law of averages. But it seems strange that another strategic bomber, and I haven't been reporting on it, but Iran continues with its strikes deep inside Russian territory. So all I'm going to say is let's enjoy this very short-lived, I believe, sigh of relief, but remain vigilant, don't let your guard down, because I tell you, had this been what it was depicted to be initially tonight, you know, the Iranians would have responded and that would be it. And what would Israel have done is the question. They would be overwhelmed. They would activate Hezbollah. They would activate the proxies. They would fire thousands of missiles at Israel. The Iron Dome would be overwhelmed and Israel would have no other option but to use either the Samson option or the United States would have to come to their aid. I still think that's the end game. I still think the goal is to get the United States into a war. But timing around election season apparently is important. Get some rest, guys. We'll talk tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Take care.